Hello, it's Richard Pears from Finextra TV, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Iggy Bassi. He's the CEO and founder of Cervest. Good morning.
Good morning, Richard. How are you?
Yeah, really, really well. I'm sure, like everybody on this Friday and the end of the first week of COP in Glasgow, you're pretty tired having walked the corridors there. Tell us a little bit about Cervest, first of all, what it is and what it does, and then we'll talk about the context for COP.
Yeah, wonderful. So we are an artificial intelligence company focused on something called climate intelligence. That essentially allows you to measure your risk in terms of what's going to happen from a physical point of view to your assets. We quantify that, and then we make that available to multiple parties to help them think about their adaptation, decarbonization, and also repricing asset risks over time.
So, I mean, you've answered it there in a good way. But looking at COP, look at the headlines that are coming out of that. Where would you say you sort of play in squarely to enable people, I suppose, with their concern, which is big announcements, but how do we turn it into action? I guess you're in the action end of the spectrum, but how?
Yeah, so first of all, that's a great question, because I think a lot of people, when we see these huge announcements of trillions of dollars have to move into climate aligned decisions, how do you get there? How do you start crawling and then walking, then over time running? So in many ways, many of our financial institutions, large corporates, even governments to a large extent, Richard, are still not quite getting the climate problem, and they're not getting it from a point of view like, well, how do I incorporate it into my day-to-day decisions? How do I think about my asset allocations, my credit decisions, or my operational growth, or where do I put my new assets, for instance? So what we're trying to do to say, well, let's take out the complexity. Let's help you go on a climate intelligence journey. Start crawling before you can start walking, and then start running over time. So I think, again, there's no prior history of large companies using climate intelligence into their day-to-day decisions. So this is a journey for much of our clients, as it is for us, as it is for governments, as it is for financial institutions. But what's clear is that the journey is necessary, and we need to move very quickly. I mean, some of the stark announcements coming out of COP, and even recently from the IPCC, we probably have about a decade to get this right, beyond which the uncertainty levels will change again, and we could be in a different paradigm of risk altogether.
Crawl, walk, run. I think that's so true to sort of encapsulate it. Let's put that in a global sort of context. So a lot of the announcements are coming out of Europe, and are clearly, people are joining up around the world, different jurisdictions. But if you're looking at a financial security, obviously it'll have a global supply chain or global portfolio. So a geospatial company has got to therefore, talk to that total universe, if you will. How do you go about doing that in terms of geography for the solution and also the recipient market?
Yeah, first of all, this is a truly global problem. And I would say that the surface area of risk has fundamentally changed over the last couple of decades. I also think the global economy has sort of integrated globally as well. So in sort of many ways, we knew this problem 3 or 4 years ago. So when we redesigned the platform, we made sure that companies or banks or governments can look at a global level, whether they're looking at physical risk, decarbonization pathways, they're looking at their supply chains, they're looking at their portfolios globally. We turn the problem around. Rather than companies trying to figure out science in different parts of the world, why not bring all the science together on a single platform and populate it with millions and millions and millions of assets, or allow companies to bring their CSV folders or their assets and bring it onto the platform so they can start analyzing at a global point of view. Because remember, carbon molecules have to be taken out globally, not just in France or Germany or UK or the rich countries. It has to happen. The global earth balance has to be the same, or else you're not benefiting. If China's not moving, or if Brazil's not behaving over time, it's a global problem. It requires a global solution. And that's essentially what we're looking for.
Fantastic. And so, the financial system has been used to analyzing, annual reports. It's now got to get its head around all these disclosures and look at these new risks. How are they receiving it? Which section of the market is kind of the early movers for you?
I think it's too early to tell. I think we've seen a lot of TCFD announcements. I think there's like 2,500 companies, 2,600 companies have now signed up. We've seen a raft of new disclosure laws come in various jurisdictions over the last year or so. So in many ways, the regulation is pushing the market to start encoding this risk, quantifying this risk, and reporting this risk. So as you know, the UK from next year has to start reporting this. So I think we estimate something like 22,000 globally listed companies in the next 36 months will be subject to new disclosure laws. Now, their challenge is still the same. They're billion-dollar companies, but they're climate infants. They still need to figure out, okay, well, what does a multi-hazard risk model mean? What does spatio-temporal analysis mean for my portfolio? So there's a huge amount of education that still needs to happen. So I think this is why we always say we should talk about climate intelligence as opposed to a climate tool or product or analytics. Over time, you have to get smart, Richard, in terms of how do you start interpreting that data, but linking it back to your daily decisions, your asset allocations, your sort of credit risk, your fixed income risk. You have to start embedding this intelligence into your workflows as well. It's no good looking at a UN report and expecting answers from that from a day-to-day operational decision making. That's not going to happen. We talk about climate intelligence, and we really think this will be the superpower to help companies absorb climate risk, understand climate risk, think about pathways to adaptation, but also think about decarbonization simultaneously.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's absolutely crucial that the financial markets, get their head around this sooner rather than later. So, all power to you to get it out there. Tell us, how can people get more information from Cervest?
Yeah, so we are still in private mode in the sense that we are revealing our platform next year to the world. So there'll be close to 500 million physical assets on there. So Richard can go and build his portfolios of globally integrated assets and start generating his climate intelligence, looking at the historic risk, the current risk, and future risk under different emission scenarios, and then start pricing that risk. Well, what's the dollar value? What's the deviation I am expected to see? So tools like climate value at risk, our climate volatility tools will allow you to look at that. But also as a financial institution, then you can say to your clients, we can see these risks in the same way that you can see those risks, because this is an open intelligence platform. So we're both looking at the same asset. Richard, we expect you to start adapting this asset if you want continued financing from us, or if you want stable insurance premium over time. So it's not only just revealing the risk, it's also then working towards pathways to start adapting that asset. So we'll be making a series of recommendations inside the platform, very asset specific, because different assets will exhibit different exposures over time. So your adaptation has to be hazard specific over time as well. You cannot just have a general guidance, right? You have to be because these assets could be worth hundreds of millions. Am I suffering from flood risk or wind risk or heat risk? Tell me specifically which risk, what's the magnitude, but what can I do with that asset over time?
Fantastic. Well, look, we want to hear more. We want to see, the demos and follow your progress. But for now, we'll have to wrap it up. If people want to check you out, cervest.com, I guess.
Cervest.earth, actually.
Cervest.earth. Well, there you go. I got that one well and truly wrong. Fantastic. Iggy, for now, thanks for your time.
Richard, pleasure. Good to see you again. Bye-bye.